I guess, good noon, everyone.
Yeah, good noon. It's morning. It's morning somewhere, right?
Yes. And guess what? This is the very first episode for 2021 of
Yay!
Wake Up
And Smell the Rosin.
Yay!
We made it.
We missed you guys. We
did.
Literally did. You know, we had our holiday break and it was fun. But you know, something was missing, you know. It was really, really nice.
I'm checking to make sure the sound is
good.
It's good.
Yeah, we're so excited. We're looking forward to starting a new year. You know, we have a lot of fun things to share with you. We planned a little bit in advance.
We sure did. Just making some adjustments. Sorry.
Yes, sure, go ahead. I think our last episode of 2020, that was 12, with our featured guest cellist Zubin went so well, so we decided to invite some more people, and later on we'll share with you of some other guests that we're expecting in our future live streams. A couple of things that we changed.
Yes, so if you noticed, it's noon, not 11.
Yes.
Central Time, depending on where you're tuning in from. But we are now doing noon. I think it's just, we got, 11 and noon are pretty close, but we thought noon might be better. We're going to try it. You guys let us know in the chat, in the comments, what you think. If you liked 11 better, we can always go back, but just let us know. We're curious as to what you think about that. But we're going to be doing noon during this season, which is our second season of Wake Up and Smell the Rosin. And it is going to be every other Saturday instead of every Saturday. We think this will give us more time to give you guys some more quality content, and also just give us more time to put together master classes, because we had such a wonderful response from the master class we did last season. So we really want to keep doing those. So we think having that gap week in between will give us the time to schedule and get everybody lined up for those master classes. And that being said, we will give you details later in the comments, or not the comments. No, yes, the comments, right? We're putting it in the comments, not the chat, because the chat disappears. But we're gonna put information in the comments about how you can sign up to do a master class with us on Zoom. So you could do yourself or one of your students. There's no age limit. There's no level limit, really. You just need to be able to already play. But as long as you've already, you're a general, late beginner to intermediate to advanced is great. So you or your students, anybody who's interested, we'd love to have you. And you can check out our episode 12. It's a masterclass with Zubin Solis if you want to get more of an idea of how those masterclasses are structured. We got already a hello from Samuel. Hi, Samuel. Thanks for tuning in. So glad to have you. Also, Violinando por ahí. Hello.
Yeah.
And
hello.
Adriana. Hello.
Hi, Adriana. Thanks so much. Happy New Year, everyone. So great. Yeah. So great to be talking not into an empty cyberspace, but
the
actually
game's all here.
Yeah.
You remember that SpongeBob episode with the fingers?
No.
There's this SpongeBob episode. This is already the third time I'm quoting SpongeBob on
Okay,
this
that's
show.
good. SpongeBob's always good.
But there's this episode where SpongeBob is he's really lonely for some reason. I can't really remember. If you remember the reason, let us know. But he's really lonely for some reason, and he draws little smiley faces on his fingers for his friends, and he's the gang's all here.
Oh,
it's really sad.
Oh, well, I'm glad. We know, actually, we've been very fortunate. I mean, since the very first time we ever started these lives, we always have people. We've never had a completely empty cyberspace.
So we actually have a gang. We don't have to draw faces on our fingers this time.
Yes, and I wanted to just, Samuel Gaitan is tuned in, so I wanted to let everyone know Samuel is going to be our next featured guest. He's a violinist, a local violinist, a wonderful young musician, very accomplished. Samuel is a student of Mr. Jeffrey Wang, and I have to say this, I always say this, but in 2008, when I came to the Valley for the first time for my job here at the university, I absolutely fell in love with the culture. I fell in love with especially the amount of music that is present in the culture everywhere, and particularly strings. Mm-hmm. And I've always been very impressed with just the level of talent here in the valley, and just the culture of string playing that's very, very prevalent here. And so it's been very fun to have now an outlet to feature that talent in the valley. And so Samuel is a young violinist, and I've met Samuel and his family here in the valley. And also, he studied with Mr. Jeffrey Wang, who is a wonderful educator, string instructor here, who lives here. So we're very fortunate. And Samuel is going to be playing meditation from Thais by Gounod, right? And this will be 2 weeks from now, February 6th. Well, we're going to do a master class along the lines, the same kind of format that we did with Zubin. And I know Thais is a very popular piece, especially with those of you, whether you're a teacher who has students who might be working on that piece, or maybe you're a student who would like to play that piece and would like to have some questions. Please tune in and make sure it'll be very, very fun. And I know you will love Samuel's playing, and I just can't wait.
Yeah, that's awesome. So yeah, that's most of our announcements for the day. I'm trying to think if we missed anything.
I think we're good.
Yeah, I think we're good.
We got coffee.
I have tea.
Oh, okay.
But it's still good. I'm drinking Yorkshire tea. That really
that's a good tea.
It's really good.
It's good tea.
It's also good. If you want like a coffee-ish drink, but you're trying to stay off of coffee, I generally, coffee sometimes make my stomach hurt, so I try to drink tea most of the time. Every so often I'll have a coffee, but most of the time I drink tea. But I love putting a little bit of French vanilla creamer in it, and it makes like a London fog, like with black tea and a little French vanilla creamer.
It's almost like fools you, like it's almost like coffee because it's the same creamer.
But I actually like the taste better.
Yeah,
it's like that London fog taste. Like if you get like a black tea, I think London fog is generally made with Earl Grey. So if you want an authentic London fog, it's Earl Grey with I believe it's like milk and some other stuff. I used to make them, and now I don't remember. I think it's like milk with vanilla syrup and an Earl Grey tea. So basically, if you do like a French vanilla or vanilla creamer in an Earl Grey tea, it's like basically the same thing.
Awesome. If you guys have a favorite drink that you use instead of coffee when you can't have caffeine, post it in the comments. We'd love to know about it.
Awesome.
Especially if they're music related.
Yeah, true. So do you want to?
So if you've seen our announcements, our latest 2 videos that we posted, 2 tutorials, the violin, my last violin tutorial was on Kreutzer 8, and Esther's just came out yesterday. We published it yesterday. Lee 1. It's a wonderful edit. So since you're already seated and ready, I'm gonna let you do it. I'm just gonna move a little bit here.
You can always comment. You can stay here. You can comment from there.
Yeah. I'm just gonna, this way I am a little bit more relaxed. I don't have to worry about being on camera.
Sure.
So I can just let you work.
Adriana said London fog is her favorite too.
Yeah, I love it.
It's so good. I used to work, fun fact, so when I was in high school, I worked at a little tea shop called Cafe Barnabas, which is like owned by my youth pastors at the time. And it was super fun, and I learned how to make a lot of really cool drinks. If you're ever in Topeka, they still have a shop in Westridge Mall. If you're ever in Topeka, Kansas, or if we have people from Kansas watching, go check them out. They're great. Samuel says coffee.
Yeah, I was going to say, Samuel, you're a young man after my own heart. Yeah, I'm coffee all the way.
I think my boyfriend is also tuned in. He drinks coffee black.
Hi, Blaze.
He drinks no cream, no sugar, just black.
I kind of got used to it now. For so long, I've been drinking just coffee without trying to avoid sugar. The other day, I actually thought I'd treat myself. I put sugar in my coffee. I hated the taste. Go figure.
Well, yeah. Okay, so
let's go.
So I'm going to be giving a little masterclass over Lee's Etude number 1. This is from his book. He has 2 books of etudes, book 1 and book 2, and they're melodic studies. And he has, what was the comment? Oh, he was just asking black. Yeah,
yes.
Black. Some people do like, I only have it black. And then Blaze said, yes, black coffee. Nice. Okay, sorry, I got distracted. I'll stop being
It's okay.
a squirrel. So I feel like, Anyway, so we have the etude here. We're looking at, you can find it on IMSLP. It's Lee's book 1, and it's 40 Melodic Studies, opus 31. And
it brings back all these memories of when you were just starting up, and when you played it reminds me of when you were just a little itsy bitsy little cellist.
Yeah, so these are awesome etudes for beginners. You definitely want to be at the point where you're ready to start shifting. These are awesome studies to learn how to shift and also how to play legato and how to start focusing on intonation. It's a really great stepping stone to eventually getting to be able to play the Popper preparatory etudes and the Popper etudes. By Popper prep, I mean he has I think it's like 15 easy studies, which technically they're not called Popper prep, but one of my teachers called them Popper prep because they're kind of a good stepping stone. Mm-hmm. So eventually we'll probably do some of those from that book too. But here, so this etude is in C major. It's the first one. I can definitely include the link to this book, the IMSLP book, in the comments after the stream. But basically, there's a lot of different things that are going on in this etude, and it is definitely easier than a lot of etudes that I've played before, like Popper. It's not quite as complicated, but it's an awesome, no matter what level you are, it's a really great lesson in playing legato, playing in tune, being solid, and having really beautiful shifts. So starting from the beginning, I'll just give you guys a little taste of what it sounds like so you have an idea. So. Basically how the etude goes. You're slurring, most measures you're slurring the whole bar, which is a wonderful exercise in bow distribution. So we can talk about that first. So one of the things I was actually talking to one of my students about in our lesson yesterday was bow distribution, and how sometimes when we're learning, we learn how to use only certain parts of, we learn to use only certain parts of the bow. We get really comfortable in certain parts, and then we tend to use the same amounts of bow for everything. So if I was, playing a scale with 4 notes, like let's say I was playing a C major scale. I would use even parts of the bow. There's no reason for me to use different lengths of bow unless it was for an exercise. But for something like this, if you do that, you're really going to be in trouble when you're trying to make this sound beautiful. For instance, if I was playing the same amount of bow for this the quarter notes as I played for this half note at the beginning, I'm already out of bow before I can even turn around to play the next measure. So one of the things that this etude teaches you is how to use a slower bow and how to use a faster bow when you need it. So using the slower bow for the half note, and then being able to split the second half of the bow for both of the quarter notes, then coming back and using the whole bow to get back to the frog. So for example, here's to the half, then dividing that between the two. Still a generally slow bow speed, but you're actively dividing each note and placing it on the bow, and it's not always the same length. Especially here, you need to make sure you don't take up too much bow on the half note, because you need enough bow to make those eighth notes sing and not sound constricted. have too little bow, they'll sound constricted and tight, you know? So you need a nice amount of bow. So continuing on. Especially this one, it's a tie. And it's a high, one of the heights of the phrasing. So you need to make sure you have enough bow to grow through those. So save, then go. Sorry, I played the wrong notes, but. So saving, and then moving through the rest. So if you notice, I'm rarely using the same amount of bow for any given set of notes, unless it's a similar pattern. But that's one of the biggest things. I won't spend too long on that, but because I have some other things I want to talk about. But I would challenge you, if you look at this etude, to experiment with the different ways you can use your bow. And feel free to let me know. Oh, my screen locked. If you have any questions, let me know. But I'll be keeping an eye on that. But yes, so that's the first tip that I would give you when working on this etude. Pay attention really closely to your bow and make sure you're not using the same amount of bow for every note, because it's really, really different, especially in this etude. And that's one of the biggest keys to getting that beautiful singing sound that we're all looking for. Secondly, the thing we don't really love talking about, intonation. So this etude is very revealing. It may look nice and simple on the surface, like when you look at it. I know when I looked at it, I was like, oh yeah, I remember this one. It's pretty simple. And then even now, I was like, oh, it's all arpeggios. It's all scales and arpeggios. And no matter how old you are or how long you've been playing, scales and arpeggios are always very revealing. And Dr. Seitz just let out a sigh.
Yeah.
But so for example, here we have measure 1. Off the bat, you're starting with the most revealing arpeggio of all, a C major arpeggio. And the most important thing here is to make sure that not only are your 3rd and 5th in tune, I would start with tuning the octaves first. So first, if you're working on intonation, of course, make sure you have the right note in the beginning, which we have the C string right next door. Great way to check. I always encourage my students to check with open strings. It's super important. And of course, assuming that you tuned your open strings before you started. So we have a nice C there. And then I like to check. Listen for the ring. You'll hear it ring if it's in tune. If it doesn't, it'll go flat. Like it'll just fall.
I like that scientific term.
Yeah, my scientific vocabulary. So now that I know I have good octaves, then I like to tune the 5th.
So the 5th is the note.
Yeah,
it's
the note
4th,
is the 5th.
But G is the 5th of the C major arpeggio,
Yeah.
so you're right. But the interval is the 4th, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah, I was like, oh wait. So the 5th, by tuning the 5th, I mean the 5th of the chord, which is G, but this interval is a 4th, a perfect 4th. So tuning that perfect 4th, and then once you have that in tune, I like to tune the 3rd with the C I already have down. And of course, you are moving around to tune these things, but it's giving you an idea of where everything is. And you can't do that with every chord just because of, finger placement, but this is a chord where you are all in first position, so you can do that. So take advantage of that. So let's say I want to keep tuning. So I tune my first measure. And if you'll notice, in the second measure, I know you can't see it, but we have a C, B, D, C, G, E. All those notes, except for the B and the D, are notes that we've already played. And that's where it gets difficult, because not only do you have to be in tune at the beginning, but you also have to make sure that the notes that you play in the second measure match exactly the notes that you just played in the first measure. So here is where a drone comes in very handy. Practicing with a drone, like putting on a C drone. Actually, I have one here. I can give a quick example. I have my tonal energy tuner.
Yeah, I love that.
I'm not sponsored, but if Tonal Energy wants to sponsor me.
No, it's a really great tuner. It's just really, really has just about anything you want. It's very easy to use. Now, just make sure you are tuned, right? Your A is tuned to that particular tuner.
So if you have a sustain, for example, this is scary to do on a live stream, but we're being transparent here. Biggest thing that's important when you're practicing with a drone, don't do this thing. Don't do that. Long notes, good pressure, adjust. No vibrato.
Yes, nailed it.
And this goes for violins as well. Anybody who wants to practice with a tuner, and not every tuner is good for practicing. Some tuners, they have that really nasally like and it just doesn't sound good. I like this app because it has a clarinet sound, so it's actually very neutral and it's
it has multiple choices. The best part, they don't vibrate. Sometimes they give you a choice of instrument and you, like, I love the oboe sound, but you would turn it on and it vibrates. I mean, how are you going to tune to it vibrating? So this one doesn't. For violin, oboe sound works very well, and it will keep the registration of the instrument. So the range will be, and then it can play any note, any octave, and any combination, and as many as you want. You could dial a whole chord and just tune to a whole chord. That's what I like about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So second tip, definitely tune this etude for sure. Make sure that you are in tune with yourself and in tune with a tuner, or my favorite, cello drones. Those are linked in some of my previous videos. I'll try to remember to link those in this video. The cello drones are awesome. It's basically, they're on YouTube and Spotify for free. You can listen for free. And it basically is just the root and the fifth. It's just an open fifths in every key. So there's like C, G, D, A, E, and then all the flat keys as well. And so you can play anything, major or minor, with those. I love those. This etude is a wonderful example of something that is great to practice with open fifths. And later, once we get further into the etude, the intonation gets a little bit, I don't know, I don't want to say harder, it just gets a little more complicated. So, for example, we get later, when we're starting to get into the kind of development of the etude, we have, all of a sudden we have a G sharp after everything was so tonal. And it's not tonal, but everything was so diatonic.
Diatonic, yeah.
That's the word. Minor. Suddenly we somehow ended up in minor. A minor. Is kind of, it goes into A minor. It's this kind of swimming around that key, and then all of a sudden eventually leads us back into C major, which is the very beginning key of the etude. So here, the most important thing is to be sure that you don't lose your center. So make sure you understand, try to figure out what key you're in, what notes, what the roots of the chords are. That's an E major chord, which is actually the 5 of A minor. So it's the fifth chord. Is that I'm saying that right?
Dominant.
Yeah, the dominant. That's
it's
the
a
word.
secondary dominant.
I was like, I forgot the word.
Secondary dominant, which leads you to
so if we're in the
another
key, if we're in the key of A minor, it's leading us. Well, it's leading us to the key of A minor. Gosh, I need to brush up on my music theory terms, but then we have an A minor chord. And it's inverted because it's not actually starting on an A. So you can go through, of course, if you're like me and you do have music theory training, this is actually a really great etude to analyze. It's very straightforward. The chords are built there for you. If you want to practice analyzing, this is a great etude. If you're not at that level, just focus on trying to tune what you can with open strings, with drones. Do what you can. And the most important thing, as I said, is don't lose your center. Find those open strings. Find those things that you can latch onto so it doesn't get too swimmy to where you're like, where am I? And this is actually a great training for Popper etudes because he does some really crazy chromatic stuff, and learning early how to work with these kind of interesting key changes and all of that good stuff is going to help you a lot once you get there. And okay, final point before I let Dr. Seitz take over. I don't want to take all of her time, but
take over.
What?
No, it's just such a militant term. Take over.
Take over. But so one of the biggest things, points in this etude that is, one of the things this etude is teaching you is shifts. So this etude is definitely going to challenge you in producing beautiful shifts. And if you aren't good at shifting yet, or you're just learning, this is a really great etude for you. Shifting is a really big part of being a cellist. We shift a lot, so it's really important to learn how to shift and learn how to shift well early on. It will make your life a whole lot easier. You'll be a lot more comfortable, and you'll be grateful that you did it. So make sure that you practice your shifts, and this is a wonderful way to do that. So if you notice, just even from the beginning, already in the first line we have a shift. Then thankfully they're usually going to 1, which is actually, it's a really good way to start, good place to start when you're learning how to shift. The most important things about shifting are 1, don't shift faster than you need to. That's one thing that is difficult for a lot of people. They feel like they just have to get there. You actually have a lot more time than you think. I encourage you, play with a metronome or play with someone tapping the rhythm out for you and really see how long you have to actually get there, and you'll be surprised, I promise, with how much time you actually have to make that shift beautiful. Another thing, and this is kind of a shifting crash course we can do, if you guys are interested in doing a more in-depth talk about shifting, let us know. Second rule about shifting is you want to be sure that you're working with gravity, not against it. So don't push, let your arm fall.
You're so lucky.
Yeah.
Cellists are so lucky.
We have gravity on our side. So,
I remember, Carter, and your professor from UMKC, he would say, going up is a misnomer. Technically, physically, you guys go down. So for you could really psychologically, such a relief to think you're not just climbing a position, you're just falling into it. That's amazing.
It is. It's really, if you think of it that way, it's a lot more comforting. And there's definitely times where when students are just learning how to shift, where they feel very tentative about moving upward, and they'll kind of do like this thing where they're like, I'll just slither up there. But it's so much better to have your arm prepared, have your arm up, and just go for it. Just let gravity take you there. Another thing about shifting is there's different kinds of shifts. There's shifts from like finger to finger, There's also shifts where you switch. So let's say I start on a second finger and then I end up on a first finger. There's lots of different shifts, so you'll have to figure out in each situation which shift is what you need. So for instance here, that's a 1-to-1 shift. So you're just moving from B to D. And one of the ways you can remember that is if you're in first position, you have your D right there underneath, fourth finger. All you have to do is replace it. So it's right there for you. And remember that, map it out. You already have all the answers in front of you. It's like a cheat sheet. So you already know that your fourth finger is here. And if you're shifting to D on first finger, all you have to do is replace. And really all you have to do for this shift, you're actually just moving the entire structure here. If you put your first finger on the D, your whole structure is right there.
That's a great point, because that actually is some of the most difficult things about shift is figuring out when you're shifting a new position, whether you need to change the structure of your hand or you can keep it the same. And when you can keep it the same, it makes things so much easier in a new position.
It really does. It makes things so much easier. It's a lot more simple that way. So, pay attention to that. Make sure you know what structure you're shifting to. With shifts, one of the most important things is to shift as a unit rather than specific fingers. Shifting involves your whole arm. Sometimes one of the misconstruements about shifting or misunderstandings is that you are shifting from one finger to another finger. And in a way that is true sometimes, but you should really think about it as you're shifting your whole structure, not just one finger. And this same teacher, Carter, he used to talk about shifting and how, you have to shift the whole structure. That was a really big thing with him that gave me a really solid base of my technique. So being able to shift your whole hand, this is actually a good exercise. So having the thumb behind the fingerboard and then gradually bringing it out and then coming back, just practicing that streamlined motion. For this etude, you're not going to be up here, but you are sometimes going to be in fourth position. So this etude doesn't really require you to bring your thumb out, but it never hurts to practice. But anyway, so he was saying, there are some pieces like the swan where it's slow and it's beautiful, and if you really wanted to, you could play with one finger. Obviously, it probably isn't going to sound so good if you play with one finger, but the point is you want to have the solid structure, because most of the time you're not going to be playing things where you could shift as you want, willy-nilly, doing whatever with your hand. And you don't want to teach that to yourself either. So shifting points, make sure you understand what kind of shift it is, work with gravity, shift the whole structure. And lastly, make sure that when you shift, you also let go of your weight. So don't, if you do that, that's what we call a glissando. And if you do too many in a row, you're going to feel like you're on a ship and you're seasick. So don't do that.
Amen.
There's a slight release when you leave the first note and then land on the second. There's a slight, you're not actually coming off. There's sometimes when I've said that in a lesson before, my student went, which I was like, okay, fair. Like, I did explain it that way. Fair.
They keep you in check.
They do.
They do.
And it's funny because sometimes we say things that, because like there is like string playing, like lingo. And when you get older, you learn the lingo, like, okay, release. I know that doesn't mean like coming off. But if I say release to someone who's starting and doesn't know that, oh, release. And that makes total sense. So you have to like remember that things are not always as they seem, literally. But anyway, so by release, I don't mean coming off.
just letting go of
Just
fingerboard, so you don't feel
letting-
the fingerboard, basically.
So letting go of the fingerboard and sliding. So if you're pressing, release pressure, and then press down, but you're never losing contact with the string.
Yes.
You have contact with the fingerboard at certain times, here and here, but when you move, you are making contact with only the string. And I love my students because, you know, those are the kind of questions that make me a better teacher. And I'm always like, wow, that's so smart. Like, I never would have even thought of it that way. And it makes me think, okay, I need to change the way I explain this. And then it makes me understand it better. So I love it when that happens. And it's also fun because you kind of get to peek into another person's thought process and get to know, like, how they're understanding things. It's really fun. But, so those are my tips for working on this etude. Most of it is pretty much the same, so it's the same kind of, I know we only really touched on the beginning, but you can apply these things all throughout. Definitely check out my video if you want to hear the whole etude, and you can definitely look it up on IMSLP. You can also buy the books as well. I'm looking at IMSLP right now. It is public domain music. This is a wonderful etude for, it's so pretty if you have a student who needs something solo for a recital. This is a beautiful etude. You know, this book has a bunch of really great etudes for solo
Very melodic.
Yeah, they're called melodic studies, actually.
Oh, okay.
So you got it right on the money.
What do you think? Of course, you mentioned that it's pop or prep, but also as far as just classical repertoire, actual, what do you think? What kind of repertoire would be person playing that would be good? Like this etude would help them.
I think honestly, most anything.
Like Broval sonata or something.
Broval, yeah. It could definitely help you there because of the shifting exercises, lyrical playing. There are moments in the Broval sonata that have very lyrical, like.
And it's in the same key.
It is in the same key. Just, you know, little things. It does help with that legato bow stroke. If you're playing the swan, if you're playing elegy, if you're playing
Echoes?
Echoes, yeah, actually it could help with echoes. The thing with echoes is that it is a little bit more of a classical piece, and this this is good, I think. Just obviously in the echoes, don't overdo it with the shift because it is classical, so it's going to be different than the swan where you have more room to shift. With the echoes, it's from a different, it's kind of more baroque-y, classical style, so you don't want to go too crazy with the shifting. But even here, you don't want to go crazy with the shifting. So you can tailor it to what kind of shifts you're practicing too. Like if you want to practice really clean shifts, or you can change it depending on what you're playing. So I would recommend, honestly, I think this etude's good for anything. And it's a great warm-up too, even if you're more advanced and you feel like, oh, this is too easy for me, try it. It's a great warm-up. I think I really liked working on it the past few days, prepping it for, recording for YouTube. So, yeah, I think anyone can work on it. It's great. And if you're a violist and you feel like transposing, you could do it
They
too.
probably have those.
They probably are somewhere.
Viola etudes are a lot of, like I know violin etudes are transcribed, and then cello suites, so I wouldn't be surprised if violists had those.
Yeah, I think this would definitely be doable for viola. But yeah, so that's all I got. But check out the video, and of course if you think of any more questions as you're watching, you can always type those in. I'll be keeping an eye on the chat. But now I'll hand it over.
Yes, I am taking over.
All right.
We're gonna redecorate. Yeah, maybe if you could bring it here. So because I have to be at a different angle.
Let me put my cello in my cello bucket.
Yeah, I'll get it. I got it. Okay, well, hello everyone again. I'm back here. And Esther, here's your phone.
Oh, thank you. I'll grab
And yes, I wanted to mention this because I was trying to find this comment from one of you guys, some of the viewers who I remember when we just started doing master classes, couple of some first ones, I got this from one of you, a wonderful request to do a master class on Bach E major solo violin partita prelude. And I was looking and I wanted to give credit to who did that, but I just couldn't find that comment. So if it's one of you who's watching, please let us know. And thank you so much. That E major prelude is one of my favorites. And I am getting ready to record it and to do a tutorial on it. But it made me instantly think of this etude number 8. And actually, partially, you can consider this Kreutzer 8 as a part of tutorial for Bach E major prelude from the third partita, because it is in the same key, E major, and it has a lot of arpeggios, it also doesn't move much. It just has a couple of places where it goes in upper positions, and that is so suitable if you're working on E major prelude from Bach's E major third partita. This is the perfect etude for you because it is not quite as difficult as the prelude, but it has all of the challenges. Because I remember the first time I was, the very first time I was working on the E major prelude from the third partita, my teacher, the first thing my teacher said, intonation is going to be very difficult here, so you have to just expect to work a lot. And so this is why I love Kreutzer 8, because on the violin, E major, actually E is one of the open strings, so you would think that it should be an easy key like an A major or G major and D major. Unfortunately, it's not. And it has to do with this one thing, just the finger positions. Since you have G sharps and D sharps, so even in the first position, So this third finger that is higher than usual, what happens, I've noticed a lot of my students who are not used to this, they would do this and then little by little the rest of the hand starts sliding up. The hand kind of wants to go back to this bunny ear position that we're so used to. And so what happens as a result, most of the time, the intonation just keeps going up and up. It just spirals up, and it's just really difficult to even, and if you're not used to watching your intonation, it could get out of control very quickly. Plus, as violinists, I think when we have a lot of sharps, we tend to think them a little bit higher normally because it's a little more exciting. And not that it's bad, it's just one of those things with, what is called expressive intonation, where you do sometimes want to push your your sharps just a little bit higher, closer to the note in which they're leading to, but that sometimes gets, again, so little by little you don't realize you're inching up. So that's why Kreutzer 8 is really, really great. And so I wanted just to go over it, and sometimes I would have a student and they would say, I don't even know where to start. And that's what I thought we'd do. So how do you even start? Obviously, Kreutzer 8, it's quite an advanced etude. It has a lot of challenges. You have your détaché stroke. First of all, it looks kind of fast, right? You have all these 16th notes. It looks fast. It has a lot of arpeggios. So it has intonation issues, it has shift issues, it has speed issues, it has détaché issues, string crossings. So what do we do first? And of course, as any teacher would tell you, start slowly. Even though it looks fast, forget that there's 16th notes. The very first thing I would do, so pretend I've never seen this etude in my life, I would tune. And I would just play it in a very boring, slow tempo, sort of. That's stage number 1. Obviously, before that, you could totally go on YouTube and listen. Don't forget my tutorial. It might help you to just hear the melody of what you're going to be playing. But your first run through, I've noticed there's this thing with your brain, they say first impressions are very powerful. So it's kind of like this. If you hurry really fast through the very first time trying to play the etude you've never seen before, guess what? The first reaction of your brain will be stress. And your body will start stressing. And so basically, just think about it, that the very first acquaintance with this etude that you ever had will be, do you really want to feel that? So, and I know I'm with you. I hate slow practice. I hate playing slowly. But now that I'm old, I can look back at how much stress I created that was completely avoidable, 100% avoidable and unneeded, by just rushing through the piece for some reason. And usually, let's be honest with yourself. You don't just do it once. You play through oh wait, let me start again. And so basically, number one, the first stage, the best thing to do is just relax and just slowly, note by note, tackle things. Now, if you don't have to even get through the whole piece at once in the first try. You could divide it into manageable chunks, and that's the second strategy. So number one, slow and steady wins the race, right? Number two, chunk it up. You don't have to learn everything in one day, right? Divide it. Some people like to plan, like I know Esther, she loves to plan everything. I'm kind of more of a winged person as I go. But one thing I know, if I know I'm not going to get through the piece in one take, usually anything new, you're not going to get through the whole thing right away. Because the reason you're learning it's probably to get better, so it's probably challenging for you. So in that case, whenever you feel, oh, this is a good chunk, I can handle it, you can stop and then go back. So you can do actually some work and hear and see some progress. So that's two. So first, slow and steady. Second, chunk it up. Third, and this goes a little bit with psychology of learning. And I've learned that, I wish I learned it sooner, but at some point, finally, I did learn from teaching and learning myself that getting better at playing an instrument, it's like growing. Kids, when they grow, it's so slow, they can't notice and they feel like it's just not happening, but they are growing, right? It's just hard to witness. So mastering overall level of playing is just such a slow process that we know you need to practice. We know you need to get better at overall quality of sound, overall quality of intonation, overall quality of stroke and everything. But that process is very gradual. And so if that's the only goals that you have, then most likely you will be discouraged because you might be improving, but you won't be able to notice it that much. So therefore, it's very important to give yourself some short-term goals, right? And what could be a short-term goal? One of the things that I love is memorization, because it is something that is very tangible. So you want a goal that is very tangible. For example, if you're trying to get through the first line of this etude, and you're making a mistake in the same place over and over, guess what? And you're getting frustrated. You know what's the best thing? Tell yourself, why don't I memorize the very first line? And if you're accidentally making the same mistakes, by taking your focus out of it and just trying to play those three measures from memory, believe me, you will not make that accidental mistake anymore, and it will make you feel better. So memorization is a really, really good incentive to practice and to see. It's very easy to see the results, even if it's just three measures. And that actually is one of the best cures to these little accidental slips that are very frustrating. You know how sometimes you just keep making this one simple mistake in this one measure, right? And the thing is, like, it's not that you can't play it, it's just you remembered it that way, right? So this is such a great, because it makes you feel so great. So suppose that you take that measure, you memorize it, play it 5-6 times without the music slowly. Then you take the measure before, measure after, memorize three, see if you can memorize those three measures, play them. After that, guess what? whenever you play the rest of your etude, you will never make that accidental mistake because it's out. Now you know it from memory. So that's the third one. So that's one of the good short-term goals that is very, very, so you want something that you will see the result immediately. Another thing that helps me with short-term goals is using recording, video recording, especially. You could do audio too, but I really like video. Because what I would do, for example, I would play maybe the first, let's say the first 6 measures. Suppose I feel I can do it. So I play these 6 measures and I think it's okay. And I don't know if you guys experience this. Sometimes I start doubting myself because I can't really, I know that it's one thing to hear yourself right under your instrument. It's another thing to hear yourself there. And so this etude particularly, for example, intonation is very important. So I would start thinking, maybe all my G sharps are too sharp and I'm not realizing it because I'm so used to it. Or something outrageous. Maybe I'm playing everything out of tune and I don't realize it. So guess what? I do a video take of myself playing, and then once I hear it on the video, I trust myself much more. I feel like I can be much more objective, and it's very easy for me. Then I would take the music, take my pencil, and as I'm listening to as I'm playing back to myself this part of the etude, when I hear something out of tune or something that I don't like, I stop the recording, I mark it. And that's it. And guess what? This is an amazing hack. Now you have these short-term goals on paper that you can, for example, maybe that G sharp, the first one is too sharp, the second one is too flat. Maybe I didn't notice. Guess what? Now I can practice. And because now I can trust myself, because I've heard it, I feel more kind of confident in my own hearing. And so, here comes that part. So these are a couple of strategies at the very beginning, right? So remember, start slowly. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead.
We have some comments.
Yes.
Eleonora says hello.
Hi, Eleonora.
Etudes. And I said, I sometimes find slow practice meditative if I'm in the right mindset. What do you guys think? And Balthasar commented.
Hey, Balthasar.
And he said, I was just thinking that this morning. It's very relaxing when you let your thoughts go by and just focus on your sound. Very meditative indeed. And he also said recordings are so humbling and productive.
Yes, guys, those are amazing. Guys, you're just like thinking with me. It's so wonderful. And and I'm glad we touched up on that meditative aspect. Remember what I mentioned at the beginning, how you put your body into stress mode if you just rush with something at the very first time so that is basically, think of it as the opposite of what you want to feel on stage, right? So playing slowly or in any way that helps you feel that meditative kind of mode, that's actually how you want to be on stage.
Yeah.
This is, if you look back to some of your best performances, the best performances were always when you weren't having that voice in your head. Okay, now make sure you make that shift on time. Make sure you switch the finger to the 3. Make sure that's a very stressful performance. But that meditative state, when it's just music, it's just your gut, you just feel and you play, and that voice is silent in your mind, that is the best kind of performance and the most confident and most successful way to perform. And guess what? The best way to cultivate is when you practice. So those are wonderful comments. And I think now that we're all paying more attention to mindful practicing, I think it's so important. Finding the place where you feel comfortable, finding getting yourself in the proper feel, proper mood, trying to find something positive when you're practicing is so important, because overall, that's what eventually going to come out on stage. Whether you are more stressed than happy when you practice, guess what? You're going to be more stressed when you're performing. So those are great comments. Thank you guys. I totally agree with that. And so yeah, so those are the points, and we'll list them all with the timestamps. At the very beginning, just in case if you don't know how to start. So the next level, it has a lot of the same, challenges as Esther described. And one of the points you made about intonation, I'm so glad you did, because that's what I discovered really makes the biggest impression on the listener as far as intonation accuracy. And it took me a while to kind of figure this out, but I always pointed out to my students. So, sometimes you hear a person and they seem to be playing in tune, and but something is that doesn't add up, and you can't put your finger on it. And so what it is, actually, it's that thing that Esther mentioned. It's not just about playing the notes correctly the first time, but once you play those notes, the trickiest part about playing a stringed instrument or flute, I bet flute is probably have the same, where you regulate your intonation to a certain degree, is matching yourself. And so this is the most frustrating part, because, for example, when I play this arpeggio for the first time, you see the first three notes, E, G sharp, B. That's just a tonic triad in E major, right? So I always tell my students, a pitch is not a laser beam, it's a zone. And so there are, and that's where expressive intonation comes from. You can choose within that zone. You have to make sure you don't bleed into the zone of the next pitch. But as long as you nail it within the zone, you could choose on some of the notes, a lot of the notes. You could choose to go a little bit higher, a little bit lower, more in the center of the pitch, right? So here we have three first notes. Obviously E, because you have an open E, you don't have a choice. You have to nail that as a laser beam. So that E has to, from the start, match your open E. But then the two other notes, for example, G sharp, I could choose to be super sunny or to be right in the middle. I don't want to go lower than the middle of the pitch for B, for G sharp. And then B, technically it should be in tune with E. But if you're just a little bit here, see, there's a little leeway there too, just a little bit. So at first time, but that's only the first time. So the first time you play a lot of the notes, you do have a luxury of choosing. You have that zone, the pitch, and you can choose where you place it. But once you played that for the first time, once you chose, then the choice is choosing for you, right? Then after that, the next three notes, because I just played them, they're still lingering in the air. Your audience and you still remember those. Guess what? Now they're turning into laser beams, because I have to absolutely match those notes exactly as I played them the first time. And so this is why arpeggios is such a frustrating but also such a useful exercise for us string players, because you're repeating the same notes, and once you played them the first time, then you absolutely have to match yourself, and there's no tolerance, like zero tolerance, especially when an etude is fast like this, because the faster you go, the more echo is, the more it lingers, right? The sooner you get to repeated notes. So at this stage, you already started learning your etude, you got through the beginnings, those four beginning stages. Second, what I love to do at that next stage is actually to slur things. I feel that when I slur, I feel that number one, I'm giving a little break to my bow arm. So I'm not using up, because imagine, so instead of doing, 12 strokes per measure, I only did 2. That's a huge difference. So your bow arm will thank you for that. Second, because of that, because you're not doing all that, believe it or not, your brain still, we don't think about it, but it still takes that same energy of your brain, you know, to do down, up, down, up. You don't realize how much energy it takes until you start playing legato, and then you realize now you can actually focus on just your intonation and not worry about your bow arm. So it makes your ears much better. You know, you hear your intonation much better. You're not distracted by constant down, up, down, up. It also makes the sound more even. So you can see it is also a little easier not to rush when you're playing long bows, especially if you give yourself a task of making sure and using up all of the bow before you go back. So I absolutely love to do that. So that's on second stage. I would totally slur it. Now, first of all, for intonation, then for shifts. You know, shifts are best learned on a slurred bow. For example, for example, the third measure, I would slur it in fourth, in 4 notes per bow, so that I can have my shift on the same slur. And then I went back to 6 per bow. You see, so here we have the same shift, the same type of shift Esther explained in Lee. And everything applies. It's the most simple shift technique you can have, just with the same finger up and down the position. This one is a little tricky because it's not in the third, but in the fourth position. And how do you get in the fourth position and not get stuck on the third? If you keep the turn of your hand this way, it will stop you when you get to the third position. So the easiest way is just open your hand a little bit more, then it'll be very easy for you to go past the third position, right? So here we are, you see we're on the next stage. Now we're dealing with shifts. And I think that's once you are over kind of figuring out the bulk of the etude, learning the notes, being able to play in a slow tempo through the whole etude, then I would zoom in into what I call epicenters of trouble. So, and here again, recording yourself is such a great help. So I would, at this stage, it's so great. I love to record myself, whether just one part that I'm working on, and then again, analyze it again and see, okay, what are the major challenges here that I hear and I see? The reason I love video, because sometimes just from seeing, I could realize that, oh, my bow is in the wrong spot, that's why this sounds bad, or my left hand is at the wrong angle, that's why it's out of tune. So it's great to be able to actually see yourself, not just hear. Yeah, did you say something?
So I was just saying, video is very telling. And I used to record myself audio only, and then one of my teachers at MSM, Manhattan School of Music, was like, you need to be recording yourself video too, because that's a whole area that you're not seeing when you just record audio, because there are things you're hearing in the audio that are being caused by things you're physically doing, but you can't see unless you actually see yourself doing it. And even with a mirror, when you're looking in a mirror and playing, you're consciously adjusting because you're looking at yourself. But if you have the camera, it's a lot more revealing because you're actually seeing like what you're doing.
Yes,
in real time.
I totally agree. And in fact, when that's why sometimes when you come to your teacher to a lesson, your teacher will be able to fix things, like tell you one thing and boom, it's fixed, and you're wondering, how did they know? Well, a lot of it is because they can see you, and from experience as a teacher and as a performer, we can tell what is hindering maybe your practice in a certain part. So that's why I'm glad, Esther, you agree with me. I think video is an incredible tool for us, especially for string players, because we're dealing with the bow, and the bow is not a part of your body, so you don't really feel where it's touching the string and what is it doing. You have to rely on visuals a lot. And so here, as you are, we're going back again on the next level, the video, you can mark, you give yourself some comments usually for me, shifts would be my first priority, because I think if I'm going to mess up my intonation anywhere, shifts would be the first thing. So so once you figured out those, I call them epicenters of trouble, don't just start always from the beginning. Like if you made a mistake, don't go back 5 measures and get to that part. No, that's why you're recording. Once you marked it, go straight to that shift. For example, if you can't nail this shift, go right there and practice it. Slowly, right? So you see, I went straight to the shift, then maybe add 2 notes previously. And this time, you see, I separated. Once I was able to kind of feel the distance on the slur, then your next step could be, okay, now let's do it separately and let's add 2 more notes before the shift, right? I think it's up both. After that, let's add a couple of after. So maybe 4 notes before and 4 after. You see, so that didn't even take a minute. I think it took probably seconds to play that. So imagine how much more you can squeeze of practicing into 1 hour if you only play those 2 notes and then just a few notes before and after. But that's all you need to learn that shift. And then you go, so that's the next one, and I call that those notes epicenters of trouble. So go straight to the problem. First fix the problem and then increase the distance, right? Include a little bit more space before and after, rather than always, okay, I made a mistake, now let me go back 10 measures and get to it again. So, you know, you're going to make the same mistake again, because by the time you get there, you'll forget why you were even playing. So that's another, it's sort of a part also, it's another way of chunking things, like we talked about at the beginning, but it's a little bit more sophisticated. So again, that is one of my favorite techniques to practice. And the next, so now you use your video, now you fix the epicenters of trouble. What's next? Next, before I feel like I'm ready to just play through the whole etude and see if I can do it. What I love to do, I will separate the etude. For example, this etude has 4 parts. So I will divide it has 2 pages. So I'll divide it into four parts. And then I love practicing each fourth to the point where I feel I can make a really nice recording of it for myself. So I would record just 1/4 until I feel like, yes, that is really, really, really good, right? And then let go. Then I would work next day. It doesn't have to be the same day. Next day I would record the other fourth, then the next and the next. And so what happens until you're very, very happy with it, just for yourself, not to post anywhere. And what happens once you feel like, yes, I can do it several times in a row and really nail this one part of this etude, I'm so comfortable, then you're ready to put all of those together. And the most fun thing about this process is that if you're trying now to perform the etude or just record it for yourself in its entirety, you will see that your brain now is not freaking out thinking, oh, I have this whole etude to play. Because what happens, it's amazing, it's so used to thinking in these big parts that when you start the first one, it's very focused on just the first part, and it kind of it's not as scary because, oh, it's just a short part, I already know it. Once you're done and you go to the next one, guess what? The same thing. It's like the lights up just far enough for you to know what you're doing, but not too far to scare you. And so that is amazing. It's just really, I've experienced that. It's a great way to cope with challenges when you're playing something long. Just get yourself to be able to play as well as you possibly can these separate chunks, and then when you're playing them together, you have to practice playing them together too, but you'll see how your brain will kind of be a little bit relieved because it can kind of divide this huge thing into more manageable chunks as you're playing. So yeah, and so that would be my last. And before I perform, even back when we were performing live, that's the true test for me. If I can record, the way I really would like to perform, then that's a great test, because recording yourself playing through is almost as much stress as live performance puts on you. So ideally, if you can play 3 or 4 times in a row and then watch it and be really happy with it, then you're ready. So that's kind of overall gist, and this works for anything, any repertoire, etudes, scales, exercises, pieces, your concert repertoire. It's really great strategy. And so particularly about that etude, I just want to touch up a few things. Number one is, in any etude, it's very important to follow the fingerings, right? And so there are a couple of spots. For example, if you look at measure 4, you have that B that you just played with the first finger. It asks you to play with the 4th finger. Now, I want you to go right back to the beginning of that and notice that before it said anything, you knew that B would be played with the 1st finger. You wouldn't play it with the 4th finger, right? Unless it says so. So this is very important. The reason I'm bringing up, because there is a later part. Let's see. There is a later part in this etude. Yeah, it's 3 measures before that. That's sort of what, making a point of what I'm trying to say. So 3 measures before the end, you have so you have here, he tells you to play B with the 4th finger, and then in the next measure, that B doesn't have anything. And I've seen a lot of students trying to still play a 4th finger. Well, guess what? Whenever there's no finger specified, what you want by default, you want to go with whatever naturally that pitch would be played, whichever finger in that position. So that's a very important thinking in the etudes. And another rule also, when you're trying to figure out if you have an accidental, if it's an A sharp, for example, and by default, you need to think, okay, in this position on this string, A is what tells me the finger. It's the name of the pitch, not the accidental. So unless otherwise specified, if my A is here, then if I see an A sharp in music, I will immediately by default think of the 3rd finger first. I will not substitute 4th finger unless it says so, because if you play 4th finger, that means you're thinking B flat. Yeah. So those 2 things in etudes, very important. Always, if a fingering is not specified, that means you just go with the fingering. You do not shift unless it says to shift. You do not exchange and use another fingering for a note unless it specifies. So, and that's how you get right? So this is basically some of the most I feel like the most common problems that students who look at this etude for the first time have. And again, in music, in concert repertoire, it's a little bit different, but you always will give yourself a great service if you always, by default, when you're stuck with figuring out the fingering, by default, you think of what is the number of fingering for that pitch, and then you adjust that note. And if it doesn't work, then you can think of different fingerings. Now, if you go to the 2nd page of that etude, on the 2nd line there's a little snippet with octaves. So very important not to lift your 4th finger here. I see sometimes my students I'm not saying it's wrong, but it is very difficult to play it in tune, and also thinking of that it's going to be much faster later. You really want to spot those little octaves right away, so when you're getting there, it is much better for what do they call structure, for the structure of your hand. It helps to keep it accurate in the position, and it helps you to learn how to play octaves. Yes, I think the ending, I love the fingerings at the end, just in case if you are not sure what happens at the end. There's some interesting fingerings, and I use those types of shifts all the time. And going back to the E major Bach, E major prelude, I love that shift. I use it a lot. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 measures before the end, you have, and he writes 3 on the G sharp. This is what he means on A string. So what it does, I love these types of shifts. When you can mask the shift by shifting while you're playing an open string. And I use them a lot. I also love using open E in the E major prelude because it gives it a very bright, very nice and sunny kind of sound. I know E string can be sometimes very annoying, and of course in orchestra, in any orchestral playing, it's a big no-no for violinists. You teach, if you ever played auditions for the orchestra or any orchestra excerpts, I'm sure your teachers told you, please do not play open E if you can absolutely help it. There are some Prokofiev and some more modern repertoire where they actually want you to play open E's for the violins, but for the most part in orchestral playing, of course, we want to avoid to ever play open E's because they're very shrill and they're very harsh. But in solo playing, sometimes for that nice effect, it's so much fun to use it, have a chance to use an open string. Plus, like I said, E major prelude is such a challenging, intonation-wise, such a challenging piece. It's nice to use open strings because if you tune well, at least you don't have to worry that it will be out of tune. So do we have any questions?
No.
Well, this is basically, guys, what I wanted to go over with this, some of the major challenges of this etude. As you can see, the Lee and this etude, I think, make a great pair for the masterclass because they are very related. And basically, anytime when you're a string player, what are the most difficult things? When it comes to intonation, once you see shifts, shifts always make things much harder and much worse. So always be on the lookout for shifts. Make sure you know your shifting technique. Always listen, turn on your ears when you're tuning. Tune to a sound.
Yeah.
So train your ears to detect, to be able to compare what you're playing with the ultimate whatever absolute pitch that you're tuning to, and then figure out, okay, am I too flat or am I too sharp, and correct. So your ears should be guiding your fingers, not your eyes. Both of these etudes are great. And that's if you're playing your scales, make sure to play arpeggios. You could pair this Kreutzer 8 with an E major, would be phenomenal actually. Regimen, if you are right now, for example, in a process of learning a Bach E major, any movement of Bach solo E major partita, this Kreutzer etude coupled with E major scale 2, 3 octave and the arpeggios, 5 kinds of arpeggios at least, or maybe 7 if you prefer, that would be phenomenal. This will put you in such a great shape that that's about it. I want to let you know, guys, I am in the process of getting ready to record the E major prelude. I've been practicing it a lot lately, and so that's why I started working on this etude too, kind of brought it back. Be on the lookout because sometime soon I will probably post a video of the E major Bach prelude, and then we could also have a masterclass on that. And Esther, did we mention that we would love people to, let us know if they would like to participate, or if they want to nominate their students to participate? Yes. Please.
So we mentioned that in the beginning, but I want to mention it one more time just in case anybody missed it. So if you're hearing this for the second time, sorry, but I'm going to say it again. So if you would like to be featured as a masterclass participant, or you have a student who would like to be featured as a masterclass participant, You can contact us through Instagram, or you can contact us through Dr. Seitz' website, and we will be posting both of those in the comments of this video. The Instagram is just at SightStringPros, and I'll post the link for the website if you don't have Instagram, but you can always direct message us there. And yes, so we'd love to have your students check out episode 12 of last season of Wake Up and Smell the Rosin on our channel to see kind of how that works. We had Zubin Solis as a guest to do a masterclass last season, and it was really great.
And again, just in case if you weren't tuned in at the beginning, we're doing now an episode every 2 weeks. So February 6th, we'll have a guest, Samuel Gaitan, yes?
Yes, he just said I have to go, but thank you for doing this masterclass. I learned a lot. See you on the 6th.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you for tuning in, Samuel. So Samuel will be performing Thais meditation by Gounod next lesson, and we're going to have a masterclass along the same line as with Zubin. So I hope you tune in.
Yes.
And if you have students who are performing that piece, please let them tune in, and you can ask any questions, and we'll be happy to answer.
All right. Well, we'll see you guys on February 6th at noon.
And I'm sure we'll have some videos coming out. I mean, the live. We'll have videos coming out between that, hopefully. But have fun and have a great, I guess. Tomorrow is Sunday, so that's the next week starting out. Weekend and the next week.
Okay, bye guys.